So let's talk about costs here, because critics of offshore wind would say that it's pretty expensive. And you take a look at the new contracts that you recently renegotiated with New York, they're more expensive than your older contracts. How should people be thinking about those higher costs?
Well, first, offshore wind is one of many renewable energy projects that we're working on. We're actually also build onshore wind and solar, and those industries are more mature. Offshore wind, while Orsted built the world's first offshore wind farm in 1991, the very first American offshore wind farms are being built as we speak. In fact, we just celebrated the completion of the South Fork Wind project just a few weeks ago with Governor Hochul and Secretary Haaland. It's a big achievement to build the first commercial scale offshore wind farm in America. And so we're standing up a new industry here that's 30 years behind Europe. And so, of course, our costs are going to start higher. And while the fuel of offshore wind and renewables in general is free, solar, wind, the cost of capital is our main driver of some of our costs. And as you know, interest rates have risen significantly over the last few years. And that's one of the main drivers of why offshore wind is more expensive today than it was 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, it feels like, of course, every conversation I have on this show is couched in the fact that we are in this higher interest rate environment. And you take a look at the economy right now, inflation is very high. And when it comes to consumers, even consumers that would like to be part of the energy transition, does it make it more difficult for consumers to really embrace and adopt some of these new innovations, such as offshore wind, when they're really worried about their pocketbook right now?
I think it's one of the challenges, is one of the things I spend time on and talk a lot with my team about. Affordability is a critical factor long term. We need to put it all in perspective, though. There's a lot of cost for the conventional power system, and that isn't as transparent sometimes to where those costs are hitting the consumer, but they are in health and environmental costs and taxes and other things. Likewise, even though our costs are higher now, we believe that in the medium term and longer term, the costs will come down, and we just need to get the cycle started. And so building the first projects like South Fork, like Revolution and Sunrise, which are two other really large projects that we're in construction on now in our offshore portfolio, will drive those costs down. I'm really confident about that. And you can see that the cost for offshore wind in Europe is significantly less than the US. So we're not dreaming it. We can see the path.
So you take a look at Europe, you're saying it seems like there's a blueprint there for costs coming down over time.
For sure, yeah.
And you also brought up solar, and I think that's a really interesting point, that you think about solar, and it feels like the American public is used to seeing the panels on roofs and fields, et cetera, when you're driving. What lessons can you take from solar, which is a more mature industry, and bring to offshore wind, or is it too idiosyncratic?
I think they're similar but different. I mean, we're building 1,400 megawatts of solar as we speak, one of the largest battery energy systems as well, coupled with one of our solar projects. So we know a lot about solar. We know about getting communities to support solar. Offshore wind actually has some benefits that are much better than solar. You can build really big projects pretty far offshore, less visual impact, much higher capacity factor is a term we use, but basically more similar to, from a base load standpoint, less intermittent, I guess you say. Solar's twice as intermittent as offshore wind, for example. So we do spend a lot of time in our company working with stakeholders to try to make sure that we rebuff misinformation and also just educate people, because it is new and people don't know very much about it.
And you mentioned a little bit, of course, your interactions that you've had with the government of New York. But let's talk about the Biden administration, because recently they actually issued a policy that would make it easier for offshore wind developers to claim a special bonus IRA tax incentive for energy communities. I'm just curious for your thoughts on that. Does that go far enough for your projects?
I think the IRA is a tremendous piece of legislature, the largest, green energy legislature in America, and it's actually having an impact on the world because other societies are having to follow the U.S. in our ambition here. It's definitely helping our business, the IRA writ large. This new topic that you brought up, this energy communities bonus, we've recently received some guidance from the Treasury Department that is favorable for offshore wind and will allow our projects to qualify for this extra bonus. Again, depends which side of the table you look at. From it's more tax dollars being used to help incentivize the industry to get out of the chutes here, but it's also bringing that back to the affordability question you asked earlier. This incremental tax incentive will actually make the cost of offshore wind lower as a result.
And of course, we're having this conversation in an election year. Clearly, clean energy, renewable energy has the support of the Biden administration. What would a Trump victory mean for your current projects and your future plans?
Well, I think if you take red and blue, you get purple. And I wore my bipartisan purple tie today. I believe that renewables and offshore wind are a bipartisan topic. The world needs clean energy. We need affordable clean energy. U.S. needs jobs and the growth that will come as these industries mature, especially offshore wind. We're building a whole new ecosystem here of infrastructure, supply chain, et cetera. But equally important, we need energy security. And so these are homegrown energy solutions, onshore wind, solar, offshore wind, in our P2X business as well, green fuels, green hydrogen. These are all homegrown energy solutions that are good for all Americans.